So, why don't we start with, I would like to start with Brendan, if I may. And a very specific reason why I want to start with Brendan. But Brendan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Brendan Thomas, head of distribution at Pluto TV. For those of you who aren't familiar, Pluto TV is a leading free internet TV service. We license content, program channels, and distribute them for free over applications, including Android TV, as well as outside of those applications.
So, one of the exciting things about Pluto TV, well, first of all, it's free, which is something I think we all love. But the interesting thing about Android, about Pluto, is that it's more of a platform. It's not just an application, right? So, can you talk about what it was like moving this platform onto the Android TV platform?
Sure, absolutely. So we were a launch partner with Android TV live channels, I want to say maybe 4 years ago. And we found building for Android TV to be a breeze, actually. And we think part of that is the wealth of, the depth of talent available developing for Android. It's a familiar platform. But we started on web when we launched 4 years ago, and then a few months afterwards, our first living room experience was with Android TV. So taking our channels, our infrastructure, our ability to program and distribute and get right into the living room, with this easy-to-use extension of Android mobile where it started, and now it's kind of obviously evolved into its own thing. Was really a tremendous way for us as a early stage startup at that point to quickly see, does our value proposition translate to the living room? Does this idea of unknown channels, curated and programmed from when we launched initially YouTube content, and then where we are today, content from most of the major studios, broadcasters, and best of digital first into true broadcast quality TV stations. It allowed us to easily prove out kind of that minimum viable product 4 years ago to the place we are today, where we're in 6 million plus living rooms.
Okay, so Peter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, my name is Peter Doherty, and I'm the founder and CTO for Think Analytics. We're a personalised content recommendations engine and a viewer analytics company. And like Colin was saying at the beginning, we view this really as a business tool. The ability to showcase content to the viewers that they might not find on their own, really being able to learn about their personal individual preferences, and be able to proactively recommend content to them, and also provide analytics for the operators to understand what's happening on their platform.
So Brendan nicely introduced us to the idea of recommendations. This is an area where you have a lot of expertise in Think Analytics. Talk to us a little bit about the value of recommendations in general, and specifically with Android TV.
Yeah, we've been in the recommendation space since 2005, 2006, and we've got over 70 operators worldwide, 200 million subscribers. All on our personalised recommendations platform. And really the purpose of it is not just to deploy a bunch of algorithms, it's to be able to make a difference in the real world. It's to be able to get people to watch more shows, to watch more channels, to watch for longer, increase their engagement, show them that they're getting value for money from their subscription, or if it was an OTT platform, keep them coming back and continuing to pay for that service. So it's vital that you really understand the content, that you understand the consumer, and that as part of a nice user experience are able to present content to people in a whole variety of different ways. That's really fundamental. There's no one best way of recommending content to somebody. And a whole variety of different experiences, whether it's linear or VOD or catch-up content, being able to really understand that consumers' likes and dislikes, what their preferences are, and recommend that content to them. And so the ability to have that flexible experience, to be able to learn from what the user's watching, what they're not watching, and feed that back is very important. And that's, I think, one of the advantages we can see as part of Android TV is the ability to change the experience, to be able to react to what's happening in real time, and again, present the right content to people at the right time.
So let's stay with the harvesting of the information that you really use to drive the recommendation process. Talk to us a little bit about that process and how you process that data and then use it to drive those recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, data on obviously data is fundamental to the recommendation engine, and learning based on what people are watching, recording, purchasing, adding to their favourites. Any action that a user might take as part of the platform can be fed into our engine. So learning, let's say on Android TV, using the TV input framework to learn based on the user's channel zapping behaviour, providing APIs so that you can easily learn from, VOD consumption. So all of that information about what the user's doing, whether they're explicitly telling you information or whether you're learning from their behaviour, all of that information is fed into the recommendations engine. And then we have a whole variety of different recommendation techniques, both personalised and non-personalised, to then be able to recommend content that we know that consumer will like, that may be on a channel that they've never watched before, and like we're talking on Pluto TV, a channel that didn't exist yesterday. Again, having the ability to understand the content on those channels and, present that back to the user in a dynamic way, keeping it fresh, keeping it up to date with their viewing habits as they change over the day or, over time. Keeping that fresh and keeping the engagement with the user is absolutely vital.
And how, talk a little bit about how that actually works in the Android TV platform, because John, I'm sure can tell us about the framework, but how do I now drive that framework to percolate those recommendations up?
Yeah, I mean, what we're able to do is we have an app that lives on the set-top box, and that's able to then capture that user behaviour information, what you're watching on linear TV, your VOD consumption, and so on. So we can capture that information on the box and, send that back to the recommendation engine at the server side. It's then able to process that data in real time. It understands all the content that's available on the platform to then be able to make the recommendations. So there, it's really all about capturing that user, viewing data, what they're watching on linear, the VOD content that they're watching. So we're capturing that on the set-top box and then passing it back to the recommendation engine.
So it's pulling together quite a large data pool to actually figure out how to make those recommendations at the time that the user plugs in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is it's about, obviously, the volume. So we have deployments where you have 10, 20, 30 million users, but at the same time, it's about the individual. So at the point of making that recommendation, what really matters is that person and their individual viewing preferences. So at that point, you only need that user's profile. You need to understand their likes and dislikes. And that's really where you can make that difference, where you can, by understanding those preferences, be able to demonstrate that you can get people to watch more content, get them to watch for longer than they have done in the past.
Indeed. Thank you. John, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll pitch you your question.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's John Stewart. My apologies if you thought the other John Stewart was going to be here. Sometimes I think Colin invites me for the advertising power on the signage. But I look after Android TV partnerships for the Americas.
You need to grow the beard longer
Yeah.
if you're going to pull off the other John Stewart. So one of the things that we've sort of been edging around, particularly with Peter's description of the recommendations engine and the data, one of the key features, and it's right here in the title of the whole session, is voice. So when I think about the voice capabilities in Android TV, It's very hard to just think about television, and I think this is one of the outstanding features about Android TV, is it's not just about the television, right? And the voice feature in particular is not just about the television. So why don't we start off with talking about the voice capabilities in Android TV, but I want you to expand that out into the whole world of screens that we use.
No, absolutely. So first off, we announced, I guess, last year at CES, bringing the Assistant to Android TV. And so this past year at CES, so I like to say you couldn't fling a dead cat and not hit a sign talking about, hey Google, talking about the voice integration. So for voice on TV, first and foremost, it needs to be a great way to interact with the TV and your TV viewing experience. The power that we bring with Google's machine learning and artificial intelligence is being able to understand context for voice interaction and natural language processing that makes the interaction much more user-friendly and therefore more usable. If you've driven any car in the last few years that has voice integration for navigation or something to that extent, it's very difficult to learn the language, to speak to it, in order to get the right result out of it. And so what we're looking to solve is that very simple, you're talking to the person sitting next to you of, hey, what should I watch tonight? And you get some choices. Oh, only the recent ones, and there's recent ones. Only the top rated ones. And you get a further and further dig into content. As we all know, content is growing massively, and so it's very difficult as a user to kind of sift through it all and get to something that's really interesting to watch in that given moment. So that's first. And I think, with the power of Google behind voice, we're positioned pretty well to do that better than most in the market today. But extending beyond TV now that you have this hub of the home that's sitting there in the living room, there's other ways to interact with it and do different things. So with the power of the Android platform, which extends into Wear and IoT, as well as tablet and mobile, now you have these other experiences that you can do as well via voice. So like turning on the lights or ordering an Uber or ordering pizza. So it opens and extends beyond. As an operator, you can also do different things with voice too. In some countries, depending on where you're from, where there's a lot of prepay stuff, so you can just ask, hey, how many minutes do I have left in my cell phone plan? Top up the cell phone plan. So it opens other ways for service providers to provide services to their customers that make it just easy and less friction, as well as super engaging for the end user.
So tell us a little bit about how difficult it is for a solution like Pluto or an operator or somebody to actually plug into the voice system.
Super easy, right? Yeah, so it's getting easier by the day. So today we have actions on Google, and I'm not the assistant expert, so I'm not going to break down all the details of it, but there's several ways that you can integrate voice onto a device. And if you're on an Android TV device, we have other ways to integrate with on-device APIs. So if you say something like show me dramas, then an app can plug into the search API and surface that content. Or you can do a cloud integration with Google, and that has a quicker responses, and it's also more guaranteed quality of the result because we have more. We can validate that it was a drama that was being surfaced versus something else. So there's multiple ways to do that integration, and it's becoming easier and easier.
Very good. Anyway, Mark, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Mark Evanson. I'm CTO of Amino Communications, and we provide devices for the service provider industry for broadcasters, cable, and IP, and a full line of Android TV devices.
So we've talked about some of the capabilities of Android TV, and we're going to be delving into those a lot more in the coming minutes. But it is very complete in itself, but it's not a complete solution for an operator. What are some of the things that are missing that you fill in?
Right, so one of the great things that Android TV brings to this space is Google coming in as a third party among device manufacturers and OTT providers, and providing the assurance of certification for both security, for content security, and also for features and functionality, so that as an app developer that your app is going to work correctly on Android TV device that's been certified. And we go through that certification process with our devices as well. But that certification covers a core set of features that have to be there. There are some extensions that are really helpful if you're a service provider, especially if you're just trying to deal with a legacy system. So for instance, MPEG-2 support is not a core part of the Android TV specification. We add that ability to our devices. Multicast is not part of core Android TV. A lot of our service providers need multicast support, so we've added that. EAS, which is the emergency alert system here in the United States, closed captioning. These are requirements for service providers to deploy a device and a service, and so we add those features and extend the basic Android TV to add those, as well as then take advantage of the OTT apps and the third-party content.
Now, one of the things that Peter talked a lot about was personalization of the experience. Is that talk to us about the customer management systems in the back end? That they also need to be integrated in here. Otherwise, how do I have a way of latching the personalization?
Exactly. So typically our approach is to go in with an in-home experience that then integrates with existing back-end systems. So unlike, I'd say, some of the other advanced UI systems that are available today that are really a replacement of the whole end-to-end system, ours is an in-home solution. So it's the devices and software that run on those devices, and then we'll talk to an existing billing system. So for instance, when there's a VOD transaction, we don't go and talk to the end billing system. We talk to an intermediary system that's already there, that's been integrated with the billing and back office system, that has a subscriber management system, and use the same integration that's already existing. So it's what we like to call a frictionless integration, where you could have a home that's running Android TV right next to a home that's running a legacy device, and the only thing that's different is what equipment and what software is running in the home, but the back office systems stay the same.
So that brings up a really interesting question. Android TV, of course, runs on some very powerful boxes, but also not quite so powerful, more pedestrian set-top box. Is it difficult to get the performance that you're looking for from Android TV on a lesser platform? Is there a lower bound to a platform?
There is a lower bound. I think we've taken kind of a different approach at this is for legacy compatibility. Our 7 series devices, which we're shipping now, a lot of operators have elected to deploy using, let's say, a legacy software because they run Linux as well as Android TV, and they have the option then of upgrading to Android TV when they're prepared to do so. So it's not like you have to take it all at once. You can start with a rollout of Android-ready devices, and when the time comes, convert them over and have a seamless, over-the-network upgrade path.
Peter, Brendan mentioned A/B testing. Talk to us a little bit about that process in the context of a platform like Android TV.
Yeah, I think this is something that really enables the operator to be able to change the experience and learn from what users are actually doing, not just based on gut feel or what you think might work, but by actually trying it out. And that's something that we also support, is the ability to run A/B tests with no change to the experience if you don't want to. Just learning, having, whether it's a different recommendation technique or some other different aspect of the experience that's changing, being able to run that without changes on the device itself, without having to roll out any firmware or other updates. But being able to run that test, measure exactly what's happening, understand the difference that it's making, try that out on 5-10% of your user base, make sure that the change you've made is making that positive difference. It's driving, whether it's consumption or purchases, whatever the purpose of that test was. Being able to execute that test, measure, and then again, presuming that test did what you expected, push that out to 100% of the base and be able to then have that velocity to run test after test after test, not having a 6-month cycle, but being able to do things and make these kind of changes. You could do it in minutes, but certainly within days in a production environment. And it really accelerates the business benefits that operators can gain from this type of technology by basing your decisions based on hard facts rather than hoping.
We do the same thing on Android. So for our retail devices, we do A/B testing for like system UX or the home screen. So we'll test that and we'll run it out to 5 or 10% of the user base, and then based on statistics coming back, decide whether we push that forward to the rest or not.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch context a little bit here. I think there are probably some people in this room who are still a little bit nervous about IP as a platform for their high-value content. So security is still, probably there are still some people who are concerned about security. Let's talk about Android TV as a secure platform for premium content services. So why don't we'll start with you, Mark, and let's talk about traditional pay television security and mapping that into a more open context brought to us by an Android TV platform.
Well, okay. So we have integrated several DRM and CIS systems with Android TV, and there is a framework for doing so. Android TV comes natively with Widevine and Play-Ready support. We've added and enhanced that, and essentially all of the major CAS operators have adopted and make available a version of their software that can be integrated into Android TV, and it's trusted and secure. And so I think that maybe 3-4 years ago there were concerns about vulnerabilities, but those have largely been addressed by the TE and other features of Android TV that have really tightened it up and made it a world-class secure platform.
Very good. And John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so Android, if you think about it, like we have Google Play Movies on the platform, so if there's concern, like we have 4K content on there, so what we require from a hardware implementation and Widevine L1 plus Play Ready, all the movie studios have certified this, so any Android TV device is should be secure after certification out of the box. So to getting additional content on there, especially if you use those services, are easy to do. And then as Mark pointed out, we've done a lot of work in the last year with a Media CAS API. So we've heard feedback from our satellite and cable partners that this was complicated, especially from an upgrade perspective. So we wanted to create a common set of APIs to make that simpler. And the feedback has been positive so far.
Very good. So John, I think before I'm going to ask for audience questions in just a second. Before we get to the audience questions, maybe we should deal with a couple of the things up front that usually come up in those sorts of questioning.
Sure.
So, some of the things about who owns the customer, do I have to have the Play Store? Can you just deal with some of those issues that might be in the forefront of people's minds?
So the number one that comes up is data. So data collection and what Google has access to. And so when that question comes up, you have to break it into two elements. So there's platform level data and then there's application level data. So application is easiest to understand because most people integrate Netflix or something like that. So Netflix has whatever data they collect based on their terms of service with their user. Google, we have ours based on our terms of service with users for things like Play and Play Movies and YouTube. When you look at Android, the platform, it collects no PII. So we collect information from the platform just to understand the health of the platform and improve it. So data metrics about how information is moving between memory and processing, and if there's bottlenecks there and things that we can use to improve the platform itself. But no PII is collected at the Android level. And as I always like to say, it's open source. So if you don't believe me, read the code. You see we collect no data. What else was it? So you had another point too.
So requirements to have Play, launching into a specific app at boot, those types.
Okay, yeah. So the requirements for there's one of your pre-questions was something the difference between operator tier and Android TV itself, and so there are different requirements, but depending on what you're launching. So operator tier is nothing more than a program on top of Android TV, and it's targeted to our operator community. It gives them more control over the UX, the whole the home screen. They control that, and we have some requirements around just placement for easy access to all the apps that are installed. So you have like an app store link on screen 0, and then when you land on that page, then you should have a way to see all the installed apps. So You can't decide to do Android TV and then hide all the apps so the users can't find them. The idea is to create this Play Store or this ecosystem so that apps are discoverable. So the requirements from Google for placement with any Android TV deployment is we have 6 apps that are required. So Play Movies, the Play Store itself, obviously, YouTube. I'm going blank on the others, but those are the main ones for TV. And then other than that, it's up to an operator or an OEM who maybe you're a TV maker and you want to create an Android TV device. You can do your own placement deals for any other thing, any other content that you want, and that's totally up to you on how you do that.
Very good. It would seem to be counterproductive, I think, to try and block a lot of the apps, right? Isn't that one of the purposes of moving to an Android TV platform?
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. When you build a platform, you're always balancing the needs of the operator, the needs of the OEM, the needs of Google, and the needs of the end user. And so you end up in this place where you want to be great for everybody, but there's always trade-offs. So we try to balance that as fairly as we can. And as part of that, that means for our app ecosystem, we can't have blacklisted apps on a device because the reason why Android is so popular and we have millions of apps and thousands of partners who develop for the platform is because they know that when they write for Android that the probability or possibility of their apps or their content being discovered is greater because Google holds that position and tries to create a very level playing field.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there for this first part. I'm sorry we didn't get to your question, but stick around because these guys will be sticking around, so maybe we can catch that question at the end. So I want to thank you all gentlemen for your great input. Please exit the stage. Leaving your microphones behind. Thank you.